There is a version of the rabbit that lives in every culture on Earth. It appears on Easter baskets and children's bedroom walls. It has been given voices, soft, bumbling, endearing. Bugs Bunny outwitting hunters with casual ease. Peter Rabbit stealing vegetables with harmless mischief. The Velveteen Rabbit teaching a child about love. Thumper, wide-eyed and trembling. The very symbol of innocence in a dangerous forest. In pet shops, they sit in glass enclosures and allow themselves to be held. At petting zoos, children press their faces into soft fur. Entire industries exist around their image. Plush toys, greeting cards, chocolate molds. The rabbit is soft and physical. It is the animal we reach for when we want to represent gentleness, fertility, good fortune, new beginnings. It is prey. That is the story. Small, delicate, designed to be eaten. That was the story. Here is what was underneath it. The first thing that changes, when you actually look at the data, is the mortality rate, not of rabbits being killed, but of the things that try to kill them. In 2014, a field study conducted by researchers at the University of Exeter tracking European rabbits, Ornithologous cuniculus, in managed warren systems recorded something that did not fit the expected predator-prey model. Stoats, one of the rabbit's primary natural predators, were observed abandoning hunts not because they had lost the trail, but because the pursued rabbit had turned, had stopped running, had, in the clinical language of the report, adopted an aggressive defensive posture and initiated contact. The stoat retreated. This was not the behavior of prey. This was something else, something the researchers described in the paper as counterpredation aggression, a term that sounds academic until you understand what it means in practice. The rabbit did not flee. It decided not to. Most people, reading that, will think, interesting, not alarming. But that was only the beginning of what the research showed. The average European rabbit weighs between 1.5 and 2.5 kilograms. That number sounds harmless. It is not. At peak sprint speed, a rabbit reaches 56 kilometers per hour, faster than Usain Bolt's world record by a margin of nearly 20 kilometers per hour. It can change direction at that speed without meaningful deceleration. This is not a fleeing mechanism. In the context of close-quarters aggression, it means the animal can close distance, redirect, and close again before a human nervous system has completed a single defensive response cycle. The hind legs are the primary weapon. A rabbit kick, delivered with both rear legs simultaneously, has been measured generating forces of approximately 70 newtons in domestic breeds. Wild rabbits, with denser musculature from constant physical survival demand, produce forces researchers at the Royal Veterinary College documented in 2019 as sufficient to fracture small metacarpal bones in adult humans upon direct contact. That is not a scratch. That is structural damage, delivered in a fraction of a second, by an animal most people would attempt to pick up bare-handed without hesitation. The teeth are not incidental. Rabbit incisors grow continuously, up to 12 centimeters per year, and are self-sharpening through a differential enamel structure documented in a 2011 paper in the Journal of the Royal Society Interface. The front surface is harder than the back, meaning the act of chewing naturally maintains a chisel edge. They are designed to serve woody stems, root systems, whatever stands between the animal and what it needs. At 2 kilograms, it outweighs nothing significant, but it converts that weight into acceleration in any direction, faster than most animals twice its size can track. Every feature, the long hind limb structure, the laterally placed eyes giving near 360-degree vision, the rotating ear pinny capable of detecting sound from 2 miles away, is a solution to the same problem: how to survive inside a world that has dedicated enormous evolutionary resources to killing you. The rabbit was not built for softness. It was built for persistence, for endurance under conditions that would end most things. And the body is only half the story. In Derbyshire, England, in the spring of 2009, a wildlife rehabilitation volunteer named, recorded in the incident report filed with the British Wildlife Rehabilitation Council, was processing an intake of wild rabbits recovered after a warren disturbance caused by local construction work. The setting was routine. The animals had been individually assessed. She had handled rabbits in this capacity for 11 years. What the incident report describes in the following pages does not read like a wildlife handling accident. It reads like a series of deliberate decisions made by an animal. The rabbit in question, an adult buck, approximately 2.1 kilograms, had been assessed as non-distressed and was being transferred to a recovery enclosure. Standard procedure. Both hands occupied, the animal held against the body in the recommended position. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. The rabbit did not startle. It did not thrash. The report notes, with the specificity of someone trying to make sense of something unusual, that the animal appeared calm immediately prior to the incident. It then repositioned, a single, fluid reorientation of the body, and delivered a sequence of 3 kicks, not random, not panicked, but targeted. The first made contact with the handler's forearm. The second, as the natural defensive response brought her hands inward, found her face. The third, and this is the detail that changes the nature of the event, was not delivered. The animal had already oriented toward the nearest exit point of the enclosure. It was done. The handler required 4 stitches above the orbital bone. The attending physician noted, in the language of someone accustomed to animal-related injuries, that the laceration pattern was atypical for an impact wound, more consistent, in his assessment, with a shearing force than a blunt strike. A chisel edge, moving at speed. The rehabilitation director, interviewed afterward, did not describe the incident as unusual in the way an outsider might expect. She described it as an escalation of behavior we document regularly, but do not often record formally, because the outcomes are usually minor. The word usually carries weight when spoken by someone who tracks these things professionally. What the investigators and the medical staff noted was not the severity of what happened. It was the method, the sequence, the precision, the deliberate redirection toward exit rather than continued attack once the objective, release of grip, had been achieved. Animals do not do that, not unless they are thinking. This was not an exception. A review of the documented record shows it was a pattern. In Hokkaido, Japan, researchers studying feral rabbit colonies near agricultural land documented in a 2017 field report what they termed coordinated warren defense behavior. A fox approaching a colony entrance was not met by fleeing animals. It was met by a rotating series of charges, individual rabbits rushing and retreating in overlapping sequences that the lead researcher described as functionally indistinguishable from coordinated mobbing behavior observed in corvids and some primate species. The fox left. It came back twice. Both times, the pattern repeated. By the third withdrawal, the fox had altered its entire patrol route, avoiding the warren entirely for the remaining 18 days of the observation period. In the Iberian Peninsula, where the European rabbit evolved and where its behavioral repertoire is most fully expressed, a 2020 study published in Animal Behavior documented bucks engaging in what the researchers classified as resource denial aggression, systematic destruction of rival males' burrow systems, not in contest with those males present, but in their absence. Preemptive, planned, executed when the rival was not there to respond. In domestic settings, veterinary behavioral literature documents something practitioners call redirected aggression sequences, with enough frequency that major animal welfare organizations, including the RSPCA and the House Rabbit Society, publish formal guidance on recognizing and de-escalating them. The guidance exists because the behavior is not rare. It is common enough to require a protocol. In rural Australia, where European rabbits were introduced in 1859 and have since become one of the most ecologically destructive invasive species in recorded history, responsible for the decline of at least 11 native mammal species, the behavioral profile of the animal under resource-abundant conditions has been studied in detail. What researchers at CSIRO noted was not aggression toward humans as a primary behavior. What they noted was strategic land use, systematic expansion, group coordination and burrowing that structurally undermines terrain across areas measured in hectares, not square meters. At some point, a pattern stops being coincidence. At some point, it becomes behavior. And behavior requires a mind. Physical capability is not what should concern you. What should concern you is what is directing it. Rabbits possess spatial memory sophisticated enough that researchers at the University of Vienna, in a 2016 study examining warren navigation, found individuals capable of memorizing and accurately returning to specific burrow entrances among hundreds of structurally similar tunnels, after intervals of up to 6 weeks. 6 weeks. In an environment of constant sensory input, constant threat, constant physical demand, the information was stored, recalled, used. They recognize individual humans, not as a category, not simply large organism, potential threat, but as specific individuals with specific behavioral histories. Research published in Applied Animal Behavior Science in 2018 documented rabbits in domestic settings consistently modifying their own behavior based on the prior conduct of specific people, approaching individuals who had previously responded neutrally, avoiding individuals who had previously caused even minor stress, and maintaining those distinctions accurately over periods of months. They engage in social deception. Field observations of dominant buck behavior in wild populations document subordinate males being misled, lured toward peripheral areas of territory through behavioral signals that dominant males do not follow themselves, effectively clearing access to central resources. The dominant animal does not chase. It redirects. The outcome is the same. The method requires modeling another individual's likely response and engineering a situation around that model. The rabbit does not react. It responds. The distinction is everything. Most unsettling is what researchers term threat calibration, the documented tendency of wild rabbits to modulate their defensive response not based on the intensity of a threat, but on its assessed capability. A larger predator receives one behavioral response. A smaller one receives a different, often more aggressive, response. The animal is not responding to fear. It is responding to a calculation. It is deciding what the situation requires. This is not an animal operating on instinct. It is an animal operating on something closer to strategy. And strategy, in nature, has only one purpose. The European rabbit population, while under pressure in its native Iberian range, has expanded its feral presence to every continent except Antarctica. In the United Kingdom alone, the wild rabbit population stands at an estimated 40 million animals. In Australia, despite decades of biological control programs, including the deliberate introduction of myxomatosis and rabbit hemorrhagic disease, the population fluctuates between 100 and 200 million. Urban encroachment is accelerating contact. As suburban boundaries extend into historically rural and semi-wild land, human-rabbit interaction is no longer a countryside phenomenon. It is a garden phenomenon, a parkland phenomenon, a schoolyard phenomenon. Wildlife behavioral researchers at the University of Melbourne noted in 2022 that urban-adjacent rabbit populations show measurably reduced flight initiation distance, the point at which an animal chooses to flee from an approaching human, compared to rural populations. They are not becoming tamer. They are becoming less deterred. Displaced animals, those whose warrens have been disrupted by construction, land clearing, or predator pressure, show elevated cortisol levels, reduced inter-individual aggression as resources concentrate, and what behavioral ecologists describe as lowered inhibition thresholds. Stress removes the cost-benefit calculation from aggression. It narrows the options the animal considers. An animal with nothing left to lose is not a different animal. It is the same animal, with fewer reasons to hold back. The question is not whether these encounters will increase. The question is whether we have any idea what we are encountering when they do. The rabbit has not changed. We changed the story we told about it. We needed something soft, something safe to hand to children, something whose image we could press into chocolate and hang on springtime walls. We took an animal that has survived for 4,000 years through a combination of physical capability, social complexity, and cognitive precision, an animal that outlasted predators specifically evolved to kill it, and we made it a toy. We gave it a name. We gave it a waistcoat. We gave it a cotton tail and a gentle disposition and a place in the story of childhood as the thing that does not threaten. And in doing so, we made the real version of it invisible, to ourselves, to our children, to the culture that now interacts with it in parks and gardens and rehabilitation centers with bare hands and no particular caution. What we lost was not just accuracy. What we lost was respect. The kind of respect that, in any honest relationship with the natural world, functions as a form of protection for both parties. We do not respect what we have decided is harmless. And the animal, indifferent to our decision, continues to be exactly what it has always been. It was never Thumper. It was never Peter Rabbit. It was never the trembling, wide-eyed thing at the edge of the forest waiting to teach us something tender about the world. The rabbit does not need us to understand it. It has been exactly what it is for longer than we have existed to misread it.